Hello. I'm not known to be a terribly tidy gardener, but this year I'm going to do some clearing up between the beds, picking up pots and moving bags, because all of those things are just going to be home to slugs and snails over winter, and I want to minimise their homes, and hopefully I can combat some of the pest pressure in this garden. At the start of the year I pot up plants that I hope are going to grow and be lovely through the summer. Some of them grow, but not very much, and some of them really don't make it. I end up with rotted tubers and dying or dead plants, or lots of weeds. And so what I'm going to do is go through and sort through any that might have a tuber that's still worth keeping, or a plant that's still worth keeping, and then for all the others I'm going to empty these pots out either onto the raised beds to add to the compost and organic matter in those, or possibly into the compost heap. And as so often happens, before I do that job I need to do something else. So I want to take down this jute string just to tidy this up a bit. But if I'm going to do that, I can also collect the pea seeds. What I have found is that I never really get to do just one straightforward job in the garden, and some of me really likes that, and part of me says, oh, that's a bit irritating, but it's just how it is. So I'm going to save these seeds. I'll take them down to the house, take them out of their pods, make sure they've completely dried out. What I need though is a container to put them in. Let me go and find one. Well, I had a pocket full of seeds in a plastic bag, so I've emptied those out into a different container, and now I have a plastic bag for putting the peas in. Let's have a little look. Well, I can see quite a lot of these pods have already opened, so they've self-sown. That's okay. I'm quite happy to have peas growing along here again. But for the winter, I want to take the jute netting down, because I may well be able to save it and use it again next year. Gosh, all of those pods are empty. But that one isn't. Oh, it's just opening up. And there inside are the peas. Already acclimatised and all ready to grow next year. So let's get those into that bag. Well, I think that's all the pods. Oh no, look, there's a few more here. I was thinking next year I might grow peas in a different bed. They've been here for a couple of years, and whilst I'm not hugely fussy about crop rotation, I actually find this a bit irritating here. Because it's very close to the main pathway when I come through. So I'm thinking next year I might move it down one bed where it's, well, just out of the way a bit more. So, peas in my pocket. Right, I propagate so many plants, and I used to find it really difficult to remember which seeds I'd sown where, and when I'd taken cuttings, or even where I'd planted things. And so I started keeping a journal and writing everything down. So I've now created this. It's a vegetable garden planner and journal, and there's masses of space in it for you to take notes and observations, to write down when you've sown seeds or taken cuttings, and even where you've planted them. I include a vegetable sowing guide, so that's times when you can sow various different vegetables. There's some information about perennial veg and also about composting. And all the way through, there are some hints and tips and some words of encouragement to keep you going in your garden. You can order your copy of a journal either direct on our website at bytherfarm.com or through Amazon. So here we go. Next step is to undo this. Now I haven't clipped this on with anything except for fixings in the ground, a U shape of metal and a plastic thing that goes through, but that actually stops it disappearing into the ground too much, and it makes it really easy to take back out again. In fact, when I bought this, it came with a tool to hook under it and lift it up. So this netting is kind of draped over the frame. And I'll need to go along and loosen it here on this side and on that side. I'm putting all the pins in at that end so I know where they are. Oops. I will spend the time and take all this growth off the jute netting, but maybe not just right this second. Oh, I thought I'd found one more pea with peas in it then. Oh, I have. That can go in my pocket too. And I have these balls on the ends of the canes as eye protection. So I got tennis balls and I cut a cross in them to push them onto the ends of the canes. And although the bright yellowy green when I first put them in was quite unsightly, it was also really good because it was a good visual reminder to protect my eyes. Okay, so I have got a bit of plant removal to do here, but that's fine. So gather that carefully. Oh, and it's tied on to this one. There we go. So this can go down to the polytunnel in a minute. That's better. I feel like I can see what I'm doing now. So I'm going to find my gloves because if I'm dealing with weeds and compost and things, I really prefer to be wearing gloves just to stop me getting any infections around my fingers. So all of this is so that I can empty the pots into this bed, which I know could do with some more compost, more organic matter in it. The thing about using these very thin rubber gloves is they're kind of designed for one use only, and I certainly don't want to use them only once. This one's even got a hole around the thumb. That's not a problem. So the next thing I also want to do is go and get a bag that I'm going to put all the weeds in. Do you do this? Do you start saying, I'm going to tidy up one thing and then realise you've got to do 3 other things before you can do that? I actually rather like the process of clearing a little bit to do the next thing. So I'm going to go through the bed and decide what are weeds, like that, and what are actually plants that I want for next year. So this is a forget-me-not, or 2 or 3 or many actually, and I want the forget-me-nots, but I don't want the grass. That's a calendula, so I want that, but I don't want these stinging nettles or these baby brambles. Wild blackberries, not welcome here. There is some rose bay willow herb. The only way to get to know these weeds is to see them and look them up and kind of commit them to memory. I don't hurry when I'm doing this process. It's one of those things, there's plenty of time. I can just enjoy the process for what it is. People quite often talk about being present, about being in the moment, and this is one of those times where I can just be quiet, I can listen to the sound of the roots coming out of the ground. I can hear the wind coming through the trees. I can hear birds and dogs barking. Well, no, the birds aren't barking. I can hear birds singing and dogs barking. And it's all really rather lovely. So clearing this has taken about 12, maybe 13 minutes. Certainly not as long as 15, although I'm still finding a few weeds. And people quite often ask me, how much time I spend gardening. Well, this bed hasn't been weeded since spring, since I put the peas in here in spring. And I very much tend to only weed if I can see there's a huge problem, or when I'm preparing the bed for the next thing to go in. So there is some space here. I'll pull these weeds out of the pots because I don't really want to be planting weeds into there. And then there we go. I'm just literally topping up the soil. These poor old dahlia tubers are not going to make it. Although, they're in there, so we'll see. But I'm not expecting anything to come of those. Now this one has got some growth on it, so I'm not going to be emptying this out. I'll be taking this down to the polytunnel and overwintering it in the polytunnel. I'm somewhat delighted that through this careful process of hand weeding, I've just found this, which is a blackcurrant, and if I was in any doubt, you can smell it very strongly. Smells of blackcurrant. So I'm going to pop that up into one of the pots that I've just emptied. Ooh, make sure I don't put any weeds in there. Here we go. So it's going to go in there. A bit more soil around it. Come on, worms, out you go. There we go. And then I'll put that just outside the polytunnel, and I'll give it a drink first. Then I'll put it just outside the polytunnel, and it can stay there over winter or until I've decided where I'm going to plant it in the forest garden. And from my point of view, that's free food. Every couple of years I make a video saying how important I think it is that we do this slow process of weeding our beds rather than just whizzing through with a hoe. Using a hoe is great when the plants are really small, but I think when they've got to this sort of size, because I didn't hoe earlier in the year, it's better then to go through by hand, because you can find all sorts of plants that you weren't expecting. So not only do I find free food and free ornamental plants, I also slow myself down. And given how busy life is and how hectic it is and how much we're expected to be on call almost 24 hours a day, I quite like the thing of putting my phone on silent and coming out here and just being part of nature.